For more on this, we are now joined by Director of CANRAD at Nelson Mandela University, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, to discuss this a bit more further. Professor, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition. Perhaps let's start here. What are your thoughts when it comes to that judgment we saw by the Gauteng High Court?
Thank you very much for having me, Smart. I think that this did not come as a shock. If you look at the trend where former President Jacob Zuma was involved, you could tell even before the judgment is pronounced that he was not going to win the case. Whether that is because of the facts he puts on the table or something else, I'm not sure. But the reality of the matter is, on this one, in fact, there were very slim chances that the former president was going to win, simply because the sitting president on this issue was not directly involved. The person who is to blame for all of this is Billy Downer, not the sitting president. So for me, this did not come as a surprise when the judge said that the case is being dismissed.
Professor, you're certainly right. Of course, a number of people even questioned this private prosecution. What do you make of the judgment where it says that, it found that there were ulterior motives for this private prosecution? If you would remember, it just came on the eve of the ANC's conference. Of course, it would also then have an impact on President Ramaphosa, who is vying for a second term in the ANC. What do you make of those words where it says that there was an ulterior motive here by former President Jacob Zuma?
No, I found those words concerning to come from a judge, because if you're a judge, you put your emotions aside. Whether you're in favor of the litigant or whether we are not in favor of the litigant, it doesn't really matter. If you are a judge, you deal with facts and you interpret those facts in terms of the law, and then you make your determination and then you pass a judgment. To say that this case had ulterior motives, one will have to first check what were the basis of that conclusion. If, for example, it's based on what you and I know, that the case came at the time when the ANC was preparing a conference, can you then make an assumption that there was an ulterior motive? What facts are you having to base your judgment on? So I have a serious problem with that statement in particular. As for the entire judgment, as I said earlier on, it didn't come as a surprise, but on this specific matter, I have an issue with the manner in which the judge handled it, because he will have to provide evidence to say that indeed this is the basis of my decision or of my conclusion on this matter.
And of course, Professor, we also saw it says that the Nolly prosecute certificate, which was issued by the NPA, did not apply to President Ramaphosa. Why do you think that the former president, Jacob Zuma, took this route in the first place? I'm sure he would have sought legal advice before taking this route.
Maybe let's first ask the basic question: who issued the certificate? Did the former president issue the certificate to himself, or was it issued by a person with a legal mind? If the latter is the case, then I think that's where the focus should be. Then, if the certificate was issued to the former president to prosecute Billy Downer, and of course the journalist, and then former president decided on its own volition to then add the sitting president, then of course there is a case to answer on that one. But if the certificate was open, then a former president used it, then of course that issue can be debated in court. But then the fact that the certificate was issued means that there was a prospect of private prosecution being carried out. It's just that in this case, there is a feeling that it didn't include the sitting president, but it included the first two who were in fact the reason why the former president had to seek the certificate in the first instance.
When it comes to the political squabbles of the ANC, do you think that the trend we've seen over the past couple of years continues to play itself within our South African courts, where factional battles are continued, to be used through the courts of South Africa?
No, absolutely. Factionalism in the ANC is a recipe for disaster for the organization, and it's a recipe for disaster for the country. If it's not contained, it is going to kill the ANC, and it's going to kill the country in return, by virtue of the fact that the ANC, at the moment at least, is the governing party. So the moment you have factional politics, it means that will end up with people who are not supposed to be in positions of power, but they get into those positions by virtue of them belonging to a particular slate that wins the day. So which means that people who are capable but happen to be in a quote-unquote wrong slate, they might not make it to the top. So that is basically a recipe for disaster, in the sense that those who end up winning in the election might not be the best that the party has to offer, but they will find themselves in those positions because they were at the right place at the right time by belonging to a particular faction. So factionalism in the ANC is a problem, as it will be a problem in any other political party for that matter.
And when it comes to, we know that the former President Jacob Zuma's foundation has released a statement saying that they are indeed studying that judgment. What are your expectations when it comes to what will happen now? One would say that, we know that the former president, in the past will exhaust all avenues, especially legally when he's challenging something. What are your expectations when it comes to the former president? Do you think that this is something that he can appeal?
It depends on where you stand on the matter. In as far as the Jacob Zuma Foundation is concerned, as they are saying, they are going to study the judgment and they are going to make their own determination. And it's, by the way, within their rights to do so. Whether they will appeal or not is neither here nor there. Even if they were to appeal and lose, they would not have broken the law, because the law was not created by them. They found it there. All they are doing is just to implement it. So I think that the onus is on them, really, to look at the prospects of winning at a high level, which doesn't look good at the moment. You can ask people who are in the legal fraternity, they will tell you that as things stand at the moment, there is very slim to close to none in terms of prospects of the former president winning on this one, especially as it pertains to the president. So if I were to advise them, I would say, fine, you have done your bit, you have tried your best, and then this is where it ends, and then deal with the reality and then move on. Because if you appeal and you still lose, there is money involved, as you heard the judge saying that the case was being dismissed with cause, and it's not the first time that this thing is happening. A number of other cases have been dismissed with cause, so it means that the financial strain on the former president will definitely escalate if the case were to continue and the president goes on to lose it again. So I think that when looking at the judgment and then looking at the prospects, they will have to arrive at a practical and rational decision, as opposed to using emotions to take the matter forward, knowing for sure they're not going to win it.
Professor Mngomezulu, thank you so much for your time. That is a political analyst, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu from the Nelson Mandela University.